Okay, so before we go into the question of what is the obligation of women in Hanukkah, I wanted to just remind everybody of what the original line in the Talmud. The Talmud does not have a tractate for Hanukkah. It does for Purim, of course, and for Pesach, and for Sukkot. There's a little bit about Shavuot, but not its own tractate. But Hanukkah does not, and so the context of candle lighting for Hanukkah is in the Gemara, the second chapter of Shabbat, where we learned about Bamim Madlikin, what do we light with, and the rabbis agreed that anything that is kosher to light with for Shabbat is kosher to light with for Hanukkah, whether it's the wicks or the oil or the utensil. But our Mashgiach and Shalvim told us this is not the simple meaning of the words, but he says, "My Chanukah, what is Chanukah?" As if the rabbis didn't know, because this was at least 300 years after the miracle. So for the last 300 years, what were they doing? They waited for the rabbis to discuss this? No, but the answer he gave is the Tanu Rabbanan, that the rabbis study. So a lot of schools in Israel, even though the kids want vacation for the holy days, and a lot of schools, even at least the more religious ones, either just study the half day of the religious studies or the full day, but not for all 8 days. So there is a little bit of vacation, but not the whole thing, because Hanukkah is really about the Torah Shebe'al Peh, the Torah, um, the oral Torah as opposed to the written. And by the way, I don't think we got with Benedict to the laws of Esh, of fire, but later on in the Gemara on the same page, it talks about what happened if somebody was walking in the street and his with a camel, and the camel was laden with linen, and the storekeeper, it went into the storekeeper, and it lit with the candle of the storekeeper. Then the owner of the camel is responsible. But if the storekeeper kept his candle outside, which would think, oh, for sure we're talking about Hanukkah. Here we're not talking about Hanukkah. We're just talking about a regular light. If it was a darker day and he wanted people to see that his that his store was open, then the storekeeper is responsible. But Rabbi Yehuda, mentioning about that specifically, says Rabbi Yehuda Omer Patur, which I think is the most interesting halacha ever. Which is that if the camel walked in the street laden with linen, and he knew that there's Jewish people in that street, and the linen got caught fire, then the person who put the Hanukkah candle outside is exempt. And Ravina, at the very end of the Talmud, explain. Rabbi Yehuda was in the Mishnah. Ravina says, "Zot omeret ner Chanukah mitzvah la'anicha b'toch hasura." This proves to us that the Hanukkah candle should be less than 3 feet high, because if it had to be more than, if it was allowed to be more than 3 feet high, they should have said you should have put it even higher, uh, so that no camel or nobody else will be damaged from these candles. So I just think that these are two very fascinating halachot about Hanukkah, and giving us the idea of really what Hanukkah is all about. So now let's talk about women. And there's a famous line that the rabbi said, that Af Henayu B'oto Hanes, that they too were part of the miracle. So of course with Purim it's the clearest possible, because Esther was a woman, and very much responsible for how the Purim story went. And so, but the question was about Hanukkah, which women are we talking about? And there was a story, or maybe a legend that probably did happen, about some lady who seduced a Greek officer and found out what his plans are for the next attack, and she was able to crush that attack, that ambush. And there's others that they supplied the men with whatever they needed in order for them to have the battle. And maybe last but not least, nowadays, women are the ones who usually make our sufganiyot and latkes with oil. So that's how they're part of the pirsumanes of advertising the miracle. Even if they weren't physically part of the miracle 2,200 years ago, they are still part of advertising the miracle and lighting the candles. And so Rav Menachem says, as we have learned, women are obligated to light Hanukkah candles, for they too participated in that miracle. A married woman fulfills her obligation through her husband's lighting, and a daughter by her father's. However, if the husbands or fathers do not light, either because they are not home or for another reason, the wife or daughter must light. A woman who lives alone must light her own candles. But of course, she can do partnering just like anybody else. If you are staying by somebody else, then we say that you should contribute a few cents or whatever, a little bit of money to participate. And so we'll continue with that. A daughter who lives in her father's house may light with a bracha according to Ashkenazi custom, even though her father already lit. According to Sephardic custom, only the head of the household lights in the home, and that's related to the Mahadrin, the more pious people. Women customarily do not work while the Hanukkah candles are burning, to demonstrate that these lights are for the sake of a mitzvah and not for any other utility. And because the Hanukkah miracle began with Yehudit, giving this holiday a higher status for women, akin to that of Chol HaMoed. According to the first reason, cooking and frying are forbidden at this time because perhaps the light of the candles will assist the performance of these actions, but not if it's in a different room. According to the second reason, only actions forbidden on Chol HaMoed, such as laundry and sewing, are forbidden while the candles are burning. However, cooking and frying foods are permitted according to this second reason, and that is the common custom. Families that customarily refrain from cooking and the like should continue to follow their custom and not change it without heter nedarim. And some poskim maintain that women must recite Hallel on Hanukkah. Since they too participated in that miracle, they must express gratitude for it. However, according to most poskim, they are not obligated, and that is the prevailing custom. Those who wish to enhance the mitzvah are commendable. According to Ashkenazi custom, they recite it with a bracha, and according to Sephardic custom, they recite it without a bracha. So also, they should not leave the shul deliberately because we're starting to say Hallel, but if they're at home, they are exempt from saying Hallel, and because Hallel is mostly related to the sacrificing of the Tamid, not so much for the miracle, and that's why there's a difference, for example, between Hanukkah and the 6 last days of Pesach, where there wasn't a special Musaf offering, sorry, not the Tamid offering, the Musaf offering. There wasn't a special Musaf offering that differentiated each day. And Sukkot, of course, on the first day they brought 13 oxen, and on the seventh day they brought 7. So we'll stop here and we'll open up for questions.